Howdy neighbors! Yeah, it's not a review episode today. I had played in the Bushiroad Championship Series this past weekend. It was a very exciting experience. There was day one of Premium and White Schwartz. I think both events were recorded at the time. I took part in the Premium side of for Cardfight Vanguard. And then on day two, I did want to take part in the Shadowverse Evolved section of that event instead of Standard, because I've been enjoying Shadowverse a little bit more since I played it way back in 2016, and I love the digital version. The day one Premium event is where we're going to be focused on today for this episode. It was a fantastic experience. I played against a lot of pedigree players at this event. There was a little bit short on players to make it a top 16. We did end up making 11th, so you know, I thank you. But the most important person I wanted to shout out was a friend called Nekomi on our Discord, who's been testing this deck with me for close to a month and a half to 2 months, and came to this conclusion of how we wanted to create a concept for a Bermuda deck that would play very, very aggressively into a lot of the meta of crest archetypes and going first strategies, that if we were to go first or go second, we can just hit the gas and just keep on going. And so I really want to thank them, and obviously I want to thank other people who helped me out with the list as well, Mash, Dave Vecht. So I really want to thank them for giving me some feedback and advice on it. If I missed anybody else who had given me advice, leave your name in the comment section below. I'm sorry if I missed you. But here we go. We are going to go into the profile, and we're going to go into matchups, because I want people to play other archetypes within Premium that could possibly lean a little bit of pressure into the meta. So we played a pile. We'll call it a Bermuda pile here. Alright, so first things first, let's get into the list itself, and then we'll talk about the matchups that we played against, because I have some of the notes here on the Navi, and I also have some notes that I've written down as well. The first grade 3, we ended up, set of grade 3s we're running as Loris. This is for your history stride turn. There's moments where you are feeling very unsafe into certain decks, or that your hand feels very awkward and you can't quite pull off a strategy that we also have assisted into this deck as well. And Loris helps you get to that benchmark, giving you 2 more force markers with very little effort. I really like Loris as an include in this archetype. It helps a whole lot that with her GB2 skill, giving you plus 5k bonus against certain aggressive archetypes, especially if you hit a defensive trigger. It makes a lot of their 20 to 30k columns a little bit weaker, so all you have to do is invest maybe a 5k shield to make yourself 31, or 15 to make yourself 41. It makes your guarding a lot easier. The other grade 3 we are running is our main beat stick of the deck, but also alternate win condition strategy. It is going to be Tidua herself, which gives you a very good angle into being able to rebounce your rear guards, especially if you're playing into something like Mythiagra Dora. You can even bounce their rear guards, which actually cancels out their ability to make you discard a card, but it can hurt you a tiny bit. It can hurt you a tiny bit yourself, because you are giving them back extra shield, and if they know that you're probably going for a Tidua angle as a win condition, they could probably set up their board with a bunch of like junk units they probably wanted back in their hands anyway, and you can probably give them ways of being able to stride or guard again. So be very careful when you use the skill. And then to give us an alternate going first strategy if we do not see Loris, so consider Ange your 4th and 5th Loris. We are running both of these because we are running Baladrena in our G zone, and it gives us a way of being able to discard an extra copy of a unit we control, so that we can always stride into Baladrena if we do need to do so. I really like her as an alternate win condition strategy, and there was a game state that I had Loris in hand and I had an Ange going first. My hand was not really well poised for Loris, because I didn't really have a good discard fodder other than the Ange to stride into it, and there was no guarantee that I would have seen another grade 3 after this. So I'd prefer, since I already had the components to be on Ange already, I'd rather stay on Ange and then search myself a Tidua as a rear guard. so then I can go Ange again, discard the pieces I needed, and still have a Tito beat stick for later. So I really liked it a lot that Ange gave me like way more ceiling than I expected. This feels more like a Yu-Gi-Oh deck profile, I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't do deck profile. I don't do deck profiles that often, so please forgive me. I will try to put images of some of the cards here, or I could possibly just put a deck log in the description below, of course. Combination of a couple grade 2s that we are running here. We are running one Prestro. This is one of the cards I was talking about that feeds very well into Tirawa. You'd usually see this card in Highlander a little bit. You could opt to run 2 copies of Prestro and 2 copies of Aqua, but I think Aqua as one of your secondary beaters next to Tirawa has been a very good lifesaver for me. Aqua being able to bounce one of your other rearguards, you can possibly discard this off of a Sedna, call it to rearguard circle. This whole archetype in Premium revolves around you bouncing your cards, calling your cards back out, and allowing you to get advantages from plussing that way. And since we do have a lot of lyrical support in our deck that allows us to feed into the discard or feed into the bounce effects we use, it is extremely handy, because you can also call this out in your opponent's turn and use this skill as well off of a Jigard Citron. Then we run one Sistico as attack option. We do have some cards in our deck that are running one-ofs, or there's some cards that we kind of want to get back into our deck. Some of the great ones we run that are bounce effects, and we do shuffle a deck a decent amount. Having this to go back, send cards back into your deck again, and it is also a 20-gate beater because we bounce a lot of cards. You can call it out on an Ange turn, and you'll have sometimes moments of this being 20 by itself. All it needs is a trigger to be 30, and this can swing for at least 20k shield by itself on a grade 3 Vanguard. And possibly stunning your opponent's card is kind of hilarious. Now, the bread and butter, the mistress herself, Svasselt. This card has been one of the biggest MVPs that I've had on the day so far. When I have seen multiple copies of her, it made my going first or going second strategy a whole lot more potent. It gave me so much more space to play with my opponent's rear guards or damage, because it creates a board for free for the most part. For you new uninitiated players, Svasselt counts herself as a grade 1 in your hand if you were to call her to rearguard circle, so you can more or less legally cheat out a free grade 1 on your going first turn into your back row, and then you can use Aqua to reset the skill. Since you might have to ride another Svasselt, or you had another unit or another Aqua or another grade 2 that you need to ride next to the Aqua, you get to reset her skill of being able to call a card. Or there's moments where off of Svasselt, I've been able to hit one of my ride line grade 3s that I need, and I might have a Loris in hand and I just need a grade 3 to discard. It's been fantastic. And hitting something like a Sedna or any of your boosters or your grade 1s has been good, and she can also possibly give you some soul. Keep in mind that if you're playing against Mythia Gridora and the skill is mandatory to resolve, you do have to put the card into your soul, and it's not an optional skill to choose. Then we have Germaine, the cycle grade 2. There's moments we use this card to just more or less search for Aqua or Svasselt or any of our grade 1s. There's been moments we actually get to use her skill to return a rear guard for an extra attack extension. I did play her first at 2 copies, but we bumped her up to 3 copies because there were moments where I felt I'm playing a little bit too much grade 3s right now. It's one of the reasons why we're running at 3-3-3. 3-3-2 split to make it 8 grade 3s in total as well. Nice round tight number. And this gives us a way of giving us attack extension. Her effect being Counterblast 1 to bounce a rearguard you control back to your hand, and you call a mermaid rearguard out. And for the majority of the deck, we just play mermaids, except for the D cards. The D cards are like War Beast and Human and stuff like that too as well, but you can bounce them back to your hand and you can call something like a Aqua or Tirawa or any of your grade 3s that are possibly just going to be used as beat sticks anyway. For our grade 1 lineup, we are playing double Rubia. As you notice in Highlander, they play the grade 2 as well, but there's moments where they need to have a lot more space in their grade 1s to play a lot more utility cards. Since our deck doesn't have I wouldn't say a weakness. Our deck doesn't have an issue like that, so we can play double copies of Rubia, which frees up a lot more of our grade 2 slots to play out the cards as well. But if you want to, you could cut down on a Germain and play the grade 2, or you could play something else, or 4th Aqua if you want to. It's entirely up to you. I do really feel like this card, even though it's a Sienna card, support card, allows us to control or slow down our opponent's aggression sometimes, and it helps really well into matchups where your opponent isn't able to stop you from G-guarding and removing their card. You just gotta kind of hope you don't have it a lot of the time, and I like this for that case. Oh, and there's moments where we actually do want to send a Rubia back to deck with Sistico, and since we have Sedna to shuffle, it gives us a way to see it again, possibly. Yeah, a couple of our one-ofs. We're running one Finessa. We're running 2 at a time to send back our heal triggers back into our deck, which was nice for a moment, but I found some of the other cards that I was running a bit more important. Then we do have the one Hunley to slow down a lot of the aggressive decks like Nova, Katrina to an extent, Musketeers to an extent, some parts of Mythiarch, but they don't really use a whole lot of CB, especially if you're a deck that pushes them to like 4 and 5 damage very early. They will usually tend to have the damage, but it's also into the matchups where your opponent is kind of aware of what you're doing and can slow you down. This can slow them down, and they can, well, crap, I don't have the CB for the thing I need to do anymore. It makes them at least think about how they do their plays. And then for our other grade 1 one-of, we are running Spiana. There have been board states that off of Lieselot, I've hit a heal trigger and I probably had to heal guard, which was funny for me because I could go into Loris, call Spiana to send back after using a CB to bounce something else. So then you call Spiana to send the heal trigger back because you have a heal trigger on your rearguard circle, because it only counts about a Vanguard or a rearguard card that has the same card, grade 3 card name in your drop zone. So you can send back your heal triggers and you shuffle your deck. So you can actually make your heal triggers live and active. It's happened a couple times to me during the tournament, and it's been a lifesaver because there's been moments where the deck, as you noticed, tends to use a bit of CB. A lot of your cards in your deck use CB. Your Ange, your Titawa, your Heltruda when you stride, and also the Germain sometimes if you want the attack extension. That's like 4 CB already. But there's moments you can't really give your opponent the chance to give you that much damage, and sometimes your opponent won't give you that much damage, and so we have Spiana to kind of help equalize us, because even though you might need to send back a dead grade 3 like a Titawa or Ange, sometimes sending back a Titawa is not too bad, because if you're going to go into Ange anyway and Ange gets to call a Titawa that you might have needed in your deck, it allows you to set up really, really well. And getting countercharge in his deck has been nice to say the least. Then we have 4 copies of Sedna. Sedna allows you to search through your deck for any of the grade 3s you need, and I run another grade 3 is I would call secondary MVP, a card that I've come to love a whole lot while playing the event, and realizing that your board really needs to be safe some of the times. Sedna gives you a 13k body with a Lieselot, so making your columns 23 very early into your opponent's grade 1. So you're attacking with your grade 1 middle column, and then your side column is probably attacking for 23, which is kind of insane. So your opponent can't just put a heal guard down in his guard for 20k shield on your first grade 1 turn. That's crazy to me. So you get potentially free damage. It's super early. Especially in an Aqua column. The Aqua by itself on your Heltruda turn is 28, which makes them have to guard for another 25k shield on something else, or 20k shield on something else. It's so cool. So Sedna has been really awesome, and being able to shuffle our deck, especially if we send back some of the cards we need to see with Sistico or with Spiana or Finessa even, has been fantastic. For our other grade 1s that we have been Oof, I've been in love with this card since we had it. Justine is a card that when you discard it during your turn, you get to Superior Call it by Soul Blasting a card, which you can end up Soul Blasting Finessa for your Sisteko, Ruby as if you had to ride them, any of your other target utility pieces. Then you could possibly send them back to deck later, and it could potentially become an attacker on a column by itself too, because you can end up like attacking with something else. You don't have a column, and then you're on Tiwa turn, so you can then attack with Tiwa, call the grade 1 on the force markers that you set up from a couple turns ago, and so it becomes a 26 or 36 if you get a trigger. So it makes it very, very problematic for your opponent to deal with. Obviously, our starter to give respect to the Madame Riviere that I played last season, that I made top 8 with at the Dutch BCS. I played the Riviere starter. And then we have Angel Ladder as the other grade 3 that I mentioned, being able to protect your rearguards into, say, a Crest Harry matchup that we did have to play against like 2 times, and having both Angel Ladders for both games. I did have Angel Ladder for a lot of the day actually, but it helped because of Sedna, so I could keep on bouncing Sedna and keep on like digging through my deck to find grade 3s. I could just dump in a drop zone, which makes my chances of hitting trigger all more likely. Then Elementaria Sanctitude to protect us into archetypes that will turn off our auto abilities, and this helps a whole lot into those matchups. Then for trigger lineup, 4 strike crits, 4 heal guardians, 3 draw triggers, 4 draw crits, and a over trigger, lyrical over trigger. I had considered playing blue OT, up to you if you guys want to. I didn't really see the necessity to do so, since we are playing a relatively aggressive strategy and our opponent is gonna possibly like heal some of our stuff or PG against some of our rear guards. Having a constant buff on your board for the rest of the game, especially if you trigger it early, makes it almost impossible. So now your aquas are not just 28, they're 48k. They're 48k rear guards by themselves. That's almost impossible. It's free damage anyway, so why would you force yourself? But if you do want to play blue OT, red OT, yellow OT, any of the other OTs, entirely up to you. I'm a big fan of the lyrical OT, not just more or less for this archetype though. For something like Riviere, I'm kind of a bigger fan of the yellow or blue OT, because sometimes you need to, with yellow, to dig into Riviere to get your rerides going, or even purple OT, so if one of your Rivieres is in damage, you can get it back to your hand, so you can possibly not have to deal with losing out your reride options. Okay, so sorry for that lengthy one. We were talking for 20 minutes for a profile here. For our G-Zone, obviously, Messiah to get your Guardian ticket. It's one of the ways that you can defend yourself into a lot of aggressive matchups. Then your History Stride when you're going to your Loris turns. So I sorted this deck out by deck log, and so there's sometimes I'm looking at how it made me sort it. I'm like, this makes no sense. 3 copies of Heltruda. There's moments where Heltruda might only come up like once or twice, but a third time is more likely into the Ling Joker matchup, and it's just respect to Ling Joker. There's most times that you or your opponent might not survive past the first or second Heltruda, so you're just like, if either of you survive past it and the game goes on long enough, so especially for how aggressive you fight as a deck, then that's something you guys need to figure out yourself. Two copies of Titoa, the Stride, allowing you to restand. There's some pretty funky things that you can do with this sometimes too. So if you go into Loris, then you do a Titoa re-ride, and then you get the 3 bounce. Since you get the plus 15 on your Vanguard for the rest of the turn, the Stride itself also gets plus 15, and then especially if Titoa herself is at least on like 2 to 3 markers just by herself. When you send everything back, you have 2 Vanguard restands and a double rearguard restand, and if the rearguard also has any like extra crits, so say for example you drive double crits and your opponent's on 4, and they have to deal with like 2 extra swings of extra crit pressure on both columns, and then your opponent has to like have 2 to 3 to 4 PGs almost, Oh, it's funny. It's funny as heck. And of course, it also gives the other rearguard Tirawa extra power based on how much open rearguard circles you have. Balladrina, that we've mentioned before, allowing you to discard any grade 1 or less out of your hand, so quick tickets and your guardian tickets also count. One Shandy, there are moments that I've realized since we are playing Loris, the chances of you actually being able to hit your 6 harmony is almost impossible, but the chance of getting to call possibly 4 rearguards off of the one Shandy is possible, because you could call Loris down just as a rear guard, and since it gives harmony to the other booster, you could swing with it, swing with Van, or swing with rear, and then potentially call a whole new set of 2 columns out of it. So I like it for that reason. And I was playing Olivia over it, and I cut like 1 Helltruda at the time, but I realized that sadly enough, Olivia was a little bit ineffective and sometimes made my hand super awkward, especially when it was pretty bad. But there's also moments where my hand was sometimes just pretty bad from the get-go, so it is what it is. It's one of the weaknesses of playing this archetype sometimes. Then for our G-Guards, instead of Dismal, we are running Leona. Leona gets to bounce your Tirawas back to your hands, any of your other grade 3s that you're probably using as beat sticks, bounces your Aquas back, your Liesalots back, any of your utility pieces, especially if they're being attacked simultaneously or attacked by just one other unit. Then we have our Flip G-Guard, allowing you to get extra shield. We rarely ever went into it. Most of our G-Guards that we only ever really went into was Leona and Citron, to be real with you. Then here we ran two of those, the crease, being able to return your rear guards back by CB1, or potentially returning your grade 3 back and getting plus 5k until end of turn, was also pretty nice. And then Citron for Rubia. So we did end up running 6 G-Guards. You could cut one by maybe cutting a Lucrece or cutting the Flip, but I don't recommend it. I think all of these have been very good in theory, and most of all the games that I've tested against friends, all of these have always came up. So I've liked them. There we have it for the deck profile. Now I'm gonna get into the matchups that I went into. I came in, obviously I mentioned before, came in 11th. I played against Gummy Bars. I don't know few of them I don't know their actual names, but I do know how they did or who they were as people. The one I played against the first round was a 2nd place Worlds finalist. Then I played against Ashley, who's also a pretty good player as well. So Gumi was playing Crest Harry at a time. Sadly enough, he had to G assist, but I think on my aggressive turn, they had hit I had hit a crit on an attack they couldn't guard, and they hit a defensive OT. Then on their offensive turn, they proceeded to heal. I was hoping they were going to attack for their last attack, so they had a Dorian out, and I had a bounce in my hand for it with a G-Guard. But a attack with Van, they didn't have a board yet. So they already attacked, and Dorian came out after the attack, so I couldn't bounce it because it didn't attack with anything else. They had like a bunch of extra power and stuff on a rear guard, and they didn't attack with it. They passed the turn, so they possibly had a read of, okay, so if he has a way to bounce back my card back to my hand, I can't deal with it. Because I think I ended up riding a Rubea that turn because I really wanted to commit the Sedna to back row as a booster and attacker. Because I didn't have a good grade 3 at the time, and then I got to dig for off of that Sedna, I got to dig for my Angel Ladder, because they had to end up like discarding all of their grade 3s for their G-Assist, which was kind of tough for them. But they got back into the game. They was on 4 damage. I think I was on 5 damage at a time. I think I put myself on 5 to keep them from healing on 6 again, or on 5 again if I kept myself on 4. And I needed the extra counterblast anyway. So I proceeded to go into Helltruda with a Helltruda with 3 discard things. I had Prestro, Justine, and Justine. So my Aqua turn was more than secured. So I proceeded to go with Germain. No, it was Aqua boost attack for 25, attack with Tirawa for 33, discard 3, bounced board, Aquas on the board. Then I had a Tidua on the markers again. Then I swung with I swung with the rear again. Then bounced, called again. Then swung with Vanguard, bouncing everything but the Tidua, because I didn't attack with Tidua yet. No, so I didn't attack with Tidua yet, and I'd gotten a crit. So Tidua had a crit already on it. So that was 43 by itself. Then I called a whatchamacallem? I call her I called a Sistico on the other rearguard circle, and that was 30k by itself because I gave a marker over there. So I had like a 4 or 5 markers on the board by this point. So I had a marker over there that I got off of the Ange, and then I had a Tito at restand. So they need to use 20 on the rear, 20 on the rear, 30 on the other rear, and then they also had to got my Vanguard, who was 33 by this time, because I also gave a marker there too as well on the ride. So that was pretty intense. And then I hit I think a heal trigger or a draw trigger, and I gave it to the Tito again. So the Tito was 53 by herself, and sadly enough, they couldn't stop it anymore. They had a decent hand. But since they couldn't retire anything with their retire effects, they didn't have enough shield, because they had accidentally called out a card that could have given them extra shield bonus because they miscounted and they overguarded my Vanguard. Because my Vanguard had ladder, so he was hitting for like 38, and I think they guarded for like 53 or something, or instead of like 53 instead of like 43. So it was like very wild. So unfortunately it messed up a tiny bit there, but it is what it is. Then we have Ashley. That was a feature match, so it's possibly on Echo CBG's YouTube channel at some point when he get a chance to upload, when he gets back home. It was a dude I played against before for Overdress, I think a year or two ago. Pretty good player. Unfortunately, I think he had ended up... I had G-assisted that game. Actually, I did. Oh, that was me. Yeah, I G-assisted that game. I ended up having to get rid of an Aqua and a crit trigger, or a Greed 3 and a crit trigger or something. And it was like a small procedural error between me. I did it wrong, where I was supposed to G-assist first because I had a Germain in hand. The top 5 was going to be a grade 1 anyway, which was a Sedna, but the order of how I was supposed to do it, I could have kept an extra card in hand, so I could have gotten rid of the Germain instead. And that basically what had happened. So if you guys see it on the YouTube channel, just know, hey, that's procedural error. I messed up there, because my understanding of like how the G-assist works, that it was supposed to be beginning on right phase and I should have the same timing, but it's actually after you draw. It's not in your right phase directly. So draw phase first, then reveal, then beginning, then you can go about your business. So we ended up taking that game. Sadly enough, their first Katrina turn, I think they set up a decent Katrina turn, but I did have Rubia and a heal trigger, so I kept them from being able to call an extra token out to kill me. So, so that protected my bacon, and I'd hit like 1 or 2 defensive, so it made me like 36 at a time. So it made it doable. Then I did a double Tito up play on them, where I went into Helltruda, and I proceeded to attack them for 6 times, I think, 6 or 7 times. 2 to 3 Vanguard swings and like 2 to 3 Tito swings, because you can also do too, since you rode Tito out to bounce 3 units, you can use the other Tito you call to use the first skill to discard stuff. So I had enough hand to do so. So then I got double Tito rearguard swings, then a rearguard swing, and then Vanguard swing, and then go back into Tito again, call the other Tito back in my hand on marker, and then I proceeded to like swing. So it was tough for them to deal. So we ended up taking that one. Then we have Supex Nater. That's Tam's friend, a German friend of mine, who doesn't play a whole lot of premium, felt like taking part in the event. I think they were playing Shiranui. Yes, they were playing Shiranui at a time, and sadly enough, they whiffed on it and it made it very tough for them to guard my columns because all of them required more than 20k shield, because at least on 30, if you're on a 13k base, you just need like a 10k shield to guard something. Sad enough, he needed 15k shield to guard like almost everything I was doing. It was very tough for him. Then we have Styles, my loss. It was a Worlds participant. Worlds participant. I messed up that game. I don't know if I would have won guaranteed, but I remember distinctly that at the time that I did my play, they were at like 8 cards in hand when I messed up. So they went into their stride turn. So they had low hand, high damage. So around 4 damage. And they had about like 8 cards in hand-ish. But I messed up of not taking notice of like what was my hand, because I had a Tito that I ended up calling. Instead, I could have just called Aqua, which would have actually made my column a lot larger, which would have forced him to go to 5, or at least PG, or at least Heal Guard to keep me from dealing the damage to them. So I messed up. I was thinking of something else entirely at the time. I don't know why. Then I could have done a Tito reride, then stride, and then proceeded to do a 3 Vanguard swing on him again. I don't know if I was guaranteed to win it, but hey, if you're gonna lose one, that's to an opponent like that who was playing a very cool and interesting archetype, which is Mythiarch Gridora. And even though there's like 2 Gridoras, if you're dealing with an archetype that has like 6 attacks potentially, it's very tough. And I also didn't see Honolulu as well. I don't think it would have helped much because he had a lot of Counterblast open. And then we went against on round 5 we went against Hita. There's a VTuber Hita. There's a friend of mine from my local area-ish. They're from Netherlands, so basically from the same, more or less from the same local area. Hita. We ended up taking that game. They got their crest. They had gotten their ride and stride. I don't remember if they G-assisted or not. I don't think if they did. They probably didn't, but our hand was a little too aggressive for them. They got to draw a decent amount of cards on their first history turn, so they proceeded to draw like 3 extra cards. But in total, the shield value of those cards was like 15k extra shield, I think like a PG, maybe a G-Guard, but I had Angel Laddered, so they couldn't really like touch my board at the time. So just sadly enough, they couldn't quite make it across the finish line, and I also kept myself on like 4 or 5 damage, so they couldn't heal out of the damage that I wanted to do to them. So I realized with this deck too is that sometimes you want to try put yourself on higher damage threshold, especially A, for all your skills, and then B, to make sure that you get to finish off your opponent, because oftentimes after you do your play, you're possibly not really surviving into a crest deck, especially if they G-guarded against you a couple times. So it's more or less all or nothing. It's a very all or nothing deck. Then Engorging Echo. Oh, I remember who this was. Yeah, this was one of the players from Zwolle, from their local area. Does play a little bit of premium. I remember they used to play Tachikaze a bit too, so I guess that's why they call themselves this. They were playing Geese that day. The first couple of turns, it was super aggressive. I had like Aqua Lieselotta's Van with a booster, and then another Lieselot with another Sedna. So I had like double Sednas plus Vanessa, and it made it almost impossible for them to guard, because they had to guard with a 28k column on the grade 2 turn. So they just got pushed to like 4, but then they proceeded to hit like all of their rescue checks. Because on their drive checks, I think they hit like 3 triggers, like double draw heal trigger, and then on my offensive turn, they hit like another. They hit another heal trigger or something. It was tough, and so they proceeded to geese me. I did a Spinaria play. No, I did a Finessa play to send back a heal trigger back into my deck, call Sedna to shuffle, but then I proceeded to drive one of the heals. I said I had 3 more heals left in deck, and I think they were like 3 or 4 damage at a time. I made a small like misplay, I think, in not keeping them at 3 damage maybe. So I could have like ride swung pass with like 3 attacks, or like at least 1 attack or something. He'd probably like no guard it, go to 4. But I'd been okay with that. Him at 4 is like so much more important to me than him at being at 5, because I can still finish the game at 4, I think. because I could have gone into Baladinena. It's one of the best ways to deal with Gize. It's going into Baladinena. So that was another game where I possibly could have taken a win if I was a bit more vigilant in like knowing what I need to do there. And then Admiral is a Italian player for round 7, fairly new to the premium scene and playing into different archetypes, because when they test for premium they play more or less into meta archetypes a lot, and so they weren't prepared for what my deck was doing. So he also got pushed to 4 damage and proceeded to have to G-assist his grade 3 into Peony, which is the V grade 3 that the deck rides into to create markers, go into Katarina. I had the heal trigger again into into Rubia, and I proceeded to bounce their rear guard so they couldn't push any more pressure. So, and then they didn't have enough shield value, and they did hit an offensive OT though, but I was kind of mentally prepared for it because the deck filters a whole lot. So if you don't pay PG the Vanguard and stuff while you're at 3, you're kind of goofing. Kind of goofing off. You gotta pay attention sometimes. Archetypes that filter that much, it's not a matter of if they'll hit OT, it's a matter of when. And if you can get a good read on it, you can prevent yourself from getting blown up super fast. So you hit like a crit OT, and then he healed. It was tough, but we ended up being able to cross the finish line, because it made me worry a little bit because he did hit OT, and I was like, oh gosh, what if he gets a heal too, and then I have to fight through that? But it worked out. It worked out, and we ended up clinching the game. All in all, I had a very fun experience with this tournament. I'm glad that I got to play against pretty awesome players during premium events. Sadly enough, for Shadowverse, day 2, I was too worn out. I could not attend anymore. Some people I really wanted to see as well, who probably only showed up for day 2, because that was the overdress segment. I couldn't. I did not have the energy, and I did not ask friends who were like living in the area that, hey, could you hold me up for like a couple days to stay there? But going in the future, I'm gonna try to do that thing more proactively and ask people like, hey, I need some players, man. A cot, the floor maybe. But it was fun, and I hope you guys enjoy this profile. If you guys want to like a combo video or combo guide of what you can do on some of your grade 3 turns with this deck, or some of your stride turns, what they could look like, put that in the comment section below, and I could probably make another video following up, giving you explanation of like what the deck can do. It's a very basic deck, to be honest. This build was, I think, used in like BROs for 2020 and stuff, but I kind of got left by the wayside because we didn't have the very good grade 3 that we used to play. I don't remember her name. I'll put the image up when I remember her name again. So thank you to all of my opponents who I played against. It was really fun games. This is possibly the most fun I have ever had with premium, even playing into crest decks, ever. Like, it's not to say the crest decks were like no threat, because most of the crest decks did hit their crest, right? Except for the Nui player, sadly. But I was like, well, I didn't hit my pieces I need, I lose, I guess. Or, oh, cool, I hit like a trigger here that puts him to damage that I need to try clinch out the game. Does he have the guard? It becomes like, okay, you try to outplay your opponent tries to outplay you. Premium at a higher level is really fun. So I just needed one more. I think I needed one more win. If I had beaten Styles or Engorging Echo, I possibly could have had a chance to make it in top 8 or bubble out. You know, who knows? 11th is what we will take. So be awesome, stay awesome, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for tuning in and stopping on by. Until next time, take care.